Okay, so in the last video I showed you how I disassembled the headlight from the 2005 745 Li. I've got the wire harness out. It's set up on the bench here. I've got my station set up. I'm going to show you all the stuff that I'm using to rebuild the harness with. There's a couple different ways of doing this. The best way would be to get the pins and the tool and crimp these on brand new wires and run a brand new complete harness and just reusing the plastic plugs. I had a hard time finding the pin information, where to even get the pins from. You can get them from BMW, although they're very pricey. By the time you get all the pins you would need to do this, it just raises the cost up a lot. You can order some from China, but then, now you're waiting for 30 days for stuff to come from China. I don't have that kind of time to wait around. I wasn't really planning on doing this. If I had planned to do this, I would have ordered a whole bunch of pins and been ready to go. So I'm actually going to cut and solder all the wires and heat shrink them, putting all new wires in here. I've seen guys online use liquid tape. Liquid tape, it works. I mean, there's guys that have done it and it lasts for years. I don't really trust it so much. You also got to wait like 20 or 24 hours in between coats or something. I don't have that kind of time to wait to redo an entire harness. So I'm just going to cut and splice it together. I've got a heat gun from Harbor Freight. These things are on sale all the time, $8, $9. Some small zip ties, wire cutters, need a couple of pick tools, and a assortment of heat shrink. I got these from Harbor Freight. They're like $5 a set. I'm using the second largest size in here, which is 3/32. It takes me 2 of these to have enough to do one harness, so it's $10 just for the heat shrink. If I'd have known a good size ahead of time, I could have ordered a spool online pretty cheaply. So again, 3/32. I'm also using some stuff out of another multi-pack I have lying around, which is 1/16, 1/32. I'm using that heat shrink on the motors for the headlight, and I'll show you that later on. Got a soldering station. I got this thing pretty cheap from hobbyking.com. It's been worth its weight in gold. I'd recommend getting one. Any soldering gun will work for this. It's not that big of a deal. And then I've just got some generic primary wire. These are from Audio Pipe. I ordered this a long time ago online, and I've got some 18 gauge, and then I've got some 16 gauge that I picked up just for some of the thicker wires here, and one of these grounds is a little bit thicker. I just got that from, I think, Walmart or Advanced Auto. Alright, let's get into it. It's very tight in there, so the key is to try to keep as much of these bends in the harness and as tight as you can, because it's tight going back together. Also, once I did the first one, I realized that the insulation on the wire that I have and I'm using is actually a little bit thicker. I think this stuff here is probably like 20 gauge for most of these factory wires, and I'm using 18 gauge, so it's just a little bit more. I'm gonna start cutting these little zip ties off here. Now I'm just gonna very carefully go through this one wire at a time, cut it off, solder it in, using the 3/32 heat shrink. And I'll just cut it to where I can slide the heat shrink all the way as close to the plug as I can and run my new wire. All done. Finally. Here we have it, pretty much all ready to go back in there. I've got the 3 wires. I need to solder the plug that I cut. But she's pretty much ready to go. So now I just got to clean the housing, and then I can start fitting this back into the housing. Okay, so my harness is pretty much done. I just went and I cleaned the housing off. I just kind of sprayed the outside down with some Power Purple, rinsed it all off really well. Now I'm going to work on trying to figure out how this harness goes back in here. Alright, so my harness is all installed about where it all needs to be. Very tight, especially in here when I go to put that fiber optic plate back in there, and I'll show you also in here because it slides in there. At this point I can go ahead and put the HID ballast back on, and the motor controls box back on here. There it is. It's T15. Alright, here we go. Now, I'm ready to start cleaning her up and getting her back together. Let me go ahead and set this to the side for now. Next thing I want to deal with is the fiber optics. Alright, so now I'm going to work on trying to clean up the fiber optic runs here. You can see it's like hard insulation that they put on there, but over time it's just very brittle like everything else. Some of it already flaked off in it before I touched it. A bunch more flaked off while I was just removing it. So what I'm going to do is I got some small little split loom here from Harbor Freight, and I'm going to bust off what's left on here as carefully as I can and slide this on there so it has a protective semi-rigid thing. I can't say this is even how to necessarily do this. I don't have a lot of experience with fiber optics, so use this at your own discretion. I thought about just taping these things, but the tape would kind of pull and tug at these, and these things are just very fine hairs. They break easy. I mean, here's a good shot of one that was already broken. And the more of these that break, the less light that's going to get to the end of them. So even as I'm doing this, I want to be very careful taking it in and out. You don't want to bend these too much. They're very easy going bends. Otherwise, it'll just snap the fiber optic tubes. Alright, here's my finished fiber optic setup. Like I said, I can't imagine this is the best way to do it, but that's just how I chose to do it. Alright, now I'll try to slide this fiber optic stuff, put this back in there. Alright, now I'm going to clean the reflector before I put it in. I'm just going to try to blow some of this off. Just wipe it with a dry towel, microfiber, very gently. I just want to get this film off. You don't want to rub too hard, you'll end up removing it. Just kind of lightly trying to polish this up some. Popping this off with a T20. Separated. All right, so Now that I've got this off, I'm going to go through and I'm going to cut each one of these apart and slide 1/16 heat shrink on it to re-insulate it. And then I've got some 5/64 that I'll use over my solder joints, and I'll just cut it apart, slide it on, re-solder it, then take the heat gun to it and shrink it all up. Alright, now I got the harness all done and protected. Now that the wiring's all squared away, I'm going to go ahead and try to polish up this lens here. It's got a pretty good film on it. Just going to use a little invisible glass, spray some on a clean, brand new microfiber. Wow, just that one little bit did so much. Now I gotta get in here to the back side. I'm sure there's some way that I could take this off, but there's just so much going on, so I'm just gonna go ahead and squeeze my tiny little fingers up in here with a rag and just do my best to wipe it down. Here's a good shot. You can see I've wiped down the outside. I've wiped down a little bit on the inside, but you can see the difference in just that film in there makes. So we'll go ahead and finish getting this all cleaned up. Alright, here's my finished projector plate all ready to go in. I just took a dry clean microfiber and wiped all around in there. Put the factory bracket back on there, plugs back in, everything's all nice and heat shrinked. Now ready to put it back in the housing. All set to get the projector plate back in here. Alright, now that I got the top adjuster bracket screwed back in a good bit of the ways, I went ahead and put the bolt in there for the other bracket. Now I'm going to go ahead and stick the motor in. Now this has a little ball, and you got to stick the ball in there and slide it in there. And then plug it in, and I'll stick the bulbs in. Alright, now I'm going to pop this apart. There's just 2 tabs on the top here. And then you just swing out and lift up. Grab the lens here. Same thing on this one. Alright, now on these, I'm just going to clean these up with a little bit of the plastics. Same thing with this. This is actually, I'm pretty sure this is actually a plastic lens. Good look at that. Just go ahead and do the same thing. This is just plexiglass here for the rings. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this little side reflector with little plastics. Now you could actually pop this piece and this outer reflective lens off, and then you could paint this if you wanted to paint it to match your car. I'm not getting into all that. I'm just trying to refurbish them. So let's go ahead and snap these back in. Alright, now I'm ready to snap in the angel eye bezel. Here are the things I have to be careful with here. There's a guide pin back here I have to slide this into. This whole thing locks into the bottom of that clear reflective housing right there, or the reflector part of it. And then I've got to also line up the fiber optics inside into those tubes. They got to snap in just right. And then all these outside legs got to go in there. And if you're not careful and slow and guide it all, you will break something. Let's get it back in. With my headlights all back together, now I can go ahead and wet sand and polish and get the lenses ready to... That Duplicolor headlight spray was no good. So I'll have to wet the sand these back down and try to get some real clear coat and just clear them up. Yay. I re-wet sanded these down and used some regular crystal clear enamel and sprayed it all down. Looks a lot better. A little windy today, so I got a lot of stuff in it. I'm no master painter, but I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. Definitely a lot better than they were. Even being careful, I've got some mistakes and setbacks. So the driver's side headlight wasn't coming on, so I pulled them both off, took the boxes back off, did a continuity test, found I have my power and ground wires reversed. So I have to cut those, splice those, put this back together and give it another test, and that ought to take care of that. There you go, just a quick test. I got it working, everything's working right. Just in time to pack it up before the rain gets. With the lens clear coated, I went ahead and wiped down all the inside here, all the halo rings, the lenses again, the inner reflector cover, just to make sure I didn't have any fingerprints or dust or hair from just having it sitting around waiting for the lens. Also stuck this inside trim piece in here. Right inside there, actually snaps inside the lens, so I went ahead and put that one back in. Now I'm ready to start sealing it up. I'm just using some RTV silicone. Windshield urethane also works. I've got black, you can use clear, there's lots of options out there. Alright, let's get these things sealed up. Alright, I got a nice even bead all the way around. Go ahead and set the lens into place very carefully. Go ahead and stick my screw in that holds the lens. Alright guys, well that's my video on how to restore these. Lots of work, but definitely turned out much better, much nicer. Definitely a lot clearer and brighter. Hope this helps you guys out there. Good luck.